Welcome, everyone. Today, we're going to completely change the way you look at a seemingly simple wooden object in this explainer. When you see a wine barrel, you might just think it's a basic storage container, right? Basically, just a fancy wooden bucket. But the truth is, the oak barrel is an incredibly active, ancient, and highly complex piece of technology that fundamentally dictates the science of winemaking.
Picture this. Think of the sensory magic of a beautifully aged red wine pouring into a glass. You've got that deep ruby color, the super complex aromas, that incredibly smooth texture. Well, here is a pretty wild historical fact for you. That entire sensory experience actually stems from an ancient Celtic invention that was originally designed for one single, completely practical purpose: transportation. They weren't trying to make a 99-point vintage. They literally just wanted a sturdy container to lug goods around. But in doing so, they completely accidentally unlocked a scientific marvel.
Okay, here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to kick things off with the magic of wine aging, then unpack the paradox of the barrel. Next, we'll dive into the big showdown, French versus American oak, break down the 5 ways wood transforms the wine, and finally, take a look at modern oak alternatives.
Starting with Section 1, the magic of wine aging, and how it was all essentially a happy accident.
So how exactly did we go from just hauling wine across Europe to deliberate, careful aging? Well, like I mentioned, the Celts were the first to use oak to build barrels, mostly just to transport liquids and solids. But over time, people started noticing something pretty amazing. The wines that spent time in these specific wooden containers didn't just survive the long journeys, they actually got better. Their preservation was vastly improved, and they started developing these really unique, special aromas. It turns out, red wines spending part of their life in contact with oak wood develop an incredible aromatic and flavor complexity that you just can't achieve any other way. A simple storage solution accidentally became the ultimate aging tool.
Moving right along to Section 2, the paradox of the barrel, waterproof yet porous.
There is this fantastic quote from Fouillot back in 1996 that hits the nail on the head. A barrel isn't just a dead, solid wall of wood. It's an active interface. It helps to think of it almost like a living envelope. You have a liquid medium inside, that's the wine, and a gaseous medium outside, the air. And the porous, permeable nature of this envelope allows for a constant microscopic exchange of liquid, gas, and extractable compounds. So wine kind of penetrates the wood, water and ethanol actually evaporate out, and crucially, oxygen from the outside slowly seeps in, all while the wood is giving its own compounds right back to the liquid.
Now, to really grasp how this works, we've got to clear up 2 enology terms that get mixed up all the time: porosity and grain. Porosity is specifically defined as the volume of voids, literally the empty space, in a unit volume of dry wood. And oak happens to have a really high porosity of 0.5. Grain, on the other hand, strictly refers to the regularity of the tree's growth rings, the spring and summer wood. Regular rings mean fine grain, irregular means coarse. But it's that 0.5 porosity that is the real engine driving the aging process.
When you zoom in on oak wood, you can actually see these physical pores. They're basically sap-conducting vessels that run right along the stave of the barrel. And what's wild is that they're all interconnected on the sides by these other little microtubes, creating this infinite microscopic mesh. This exact mesh is what allows for the slow, constant entry of oxygen from the outside world directly into your wine.
Get this, 6 liters. That is the amount of oxygen per month that enters a standard, brand new 225-liter oak barrel. I know, it sounds like a massive amount, but it happens so incredibly slowly and steadily that it drives a vital chemical process we call microoxygenation. And here's a cool caveat. As a barrel gets older, wine compounds like potassium bitartrate actually clog those tiny pores up over time, which is exactly why new barrels give you way more oxygen exchange than used ones.
Which brings us to Section 3, the big showdown, French versus American oak, the geography of flavor.
The difference between these 2 titans of the wine world is fundamentally structural. American oak is incredibly compact, making it harder and practically impermeable to liquid. But paradoxically, its individual pores are actually larger than French oak pores. Because of these larger pores, American oak seeds its chemical compounds way faster, which reduces the wine's astringency quicker and delivers highly potent aromas. We're talking big hits of coconut, smoke, tobacco, and cocoa. French oak, on the flip side, has softer wood but much finer pores. So extraction is a lot slower, far more balanced, and yields these softer, super elegant wines with delicate notes of vanilla, spices, and balsamic.
But hey,
It's not just a simple matter of country of origin. The exact porosity of any given barrel is super dynamic. It depends on the specific oak species, the terroir, so altitude, climate, and soil, and a massive one, the tree's growth speed. For instance, if an oak tree grows too rapidly, its wood is going to be less dense and therefore much more porous. This one single variable fundamentally alters how the barrel is going to breathe and ultimately how the finished wine is going to taste in your glass.
All right, Section 4, Transforming the Wine. Let's look at the 5 big effects.
So what exact chemical and physical changes does this breathing wooden vessel actually cause? Well, there are 5 primary effects here. First up, it polishes the tannins. That slow micro-oxygenation softens the wine, letting the tannins from the wood and the tannins from the wine marry together into something really elegant. Second, it majorly increases aromatic complexity, pulling out flavors like caramel, toast, and dried fruits. Third, it increases the actual physical volume and body on the palate. Fourth, it stabilizes the coloring matter. It literally locks in that deep hue because of a reaction between the wood tannins and the wine's anthocyanins. And fifth, it improves the overall organoleptic traits, basically giving the wine a distinct, sophisticated personality that ensures it's going to last for years.
And finally, Section 5, Modern Oak Alternatives and Industry Innovation.
Let's face it, traditional barrels are expensive, and they take a lot of time. So instead of building the whole barrel, winemakers can now use specific oak fragments. We're talking oak powder, fine shavings or chips, rectangular blocks like dominoes, and even these really long micro-staves. These are made from the exact same high-quality Quercus oak, perfectly dried and toasted, but they're just tossed directly into the wine tanks. If we compare the formats, the variables are wild. Smaller pieces, like powder or chips, give you a massive surface area, so you might only need 5 to 30 grams per liter, and the contact time is incredibly short, maybe just weeks or a few months to extract all that flavor. But larger formats like staves or cubes, they have a much lower extraction rate, so they might stay hanging out in the tank for months or even years, requiring constant tasting and super rigorous monitoring by the winemaker.
So the crucial takeaway here is really understanding the objective trade-offs between the two methods. Alternatives give you a much larger wood-to-wine contact surface. That means they extract those aromatic compounds and simulate barrel flavors way faster, which obviously saves time and money. But, and it's a huge but, they totally lack the natural controlled micro-oxygenation of a whole breathing barrel. Barrels provide a much slower, way more gradual, and deeply complex chemical evolution, simply because of that steady drip of 6 liters of oxygen a month.
Which leaves us with a pretty fascinating thought experiment to wrap up on. Knowing all of this now, knowing the mechanics of porosity, those 5 transformative effects in the precise science of micro-oxygenation versus rapid extraction, if you were poured 2 identical-looking glasses, do you think you could blind taste the difference between a traditional barrel-aged wine and one that was perfected with modern microstaves? Next time you pour yourself a glass of aged red, I challenge you to test your own palate and see if you can literally taste the science. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring the amazing science hiding in your glass.